over here. Wow. There are a lot of you here, which is a good thing. Okay, and then there was a hush. Okay, I'll let a couple of people go past. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very, very special event. What will it take to end poverty? Hosted here at the World Bank Group headquarters atrium in a very chilly Washington, D.C. I have to add that. My name is Aisha Sasay. I'm a CNN international anchor and correspondent based in Atlanta, Georgia. And it's great to be with you and great to see so many of you here with us. And at this point in time, I'd also like to welcome the global audience that are watching us here, watching us on worldbank.org and also with one.org in English, French, and Arabic. And you can also follow along on Twitter using the hashtag WBLive. Now, as you can see, there are a lot of you standing in this light-packed atrium. And some of you are World Bank staff. There's also people here from the One campaign, civil society, and media. So you can do more of that. So, before the main attractions come on, I want to give you a little bit of background very, very quickly. They are coming, but stay with me. A little background. 2 months ago, the World Bank launched a global conversation asking people around the world what will it take to overcome the challenges. You guys aren't even listening, but I'm going to keep on going. I'm an anchor. I'm used to you not listening. Let them come on down. Come on. The main attraction, the recently appointed president of the World Bank Group, Yong and Bono. Okay, you didn't listen to my intro, so you're going to hear it now. Okay, you need the background to this. 2 months ago, the World Bank, as many of you know, launched this global conversation with people around the world, asking them what will it take to overcome the challenges to ending poverty. The World Bank received hundreds of thousands of responses from people from more than 90 countries, sent in via Twitter and Facebook. Also, I need to point this out for people watching us online. If you work at the bank, you probably know the wall. The wall of thoughts sent in from people. They sent them in via the old-fashioned postcard, or the cool kids say offline tweets. I'm not sure what you cool kids say. But here you have it. We have these two here joining us for what I hope will be a very spirited, engaging, challenging conversation. They are two of the leading voices on the cause of global development. I don't really need to introduce Bono. You gave him the warm welcome. You know Yong, but as I am in his house, on his turf, I'd like you to say a few words.
Yes, Isha, thank you so much for coming. My name is actually Yong Kim, and not King, but it's okay. I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take King. It's okay.
It's the British accent. I definitely said Kim.
Looking very royal, I might add.
Well, first of all, you're very busy, and we're so grateful for you to come. And it's great to see this audience. And before we came out, what I was telling Bono is that this is the army that will end poverty. What we found... what I found in 4 months...
They don't know how to dress. Where's all the suits and ties? Oh, good.
Well, what I found is that there's incredible passion among staff at the World Bank to end poverty, and this has been something that you've thought about for a long time. And I just want to say, it was almost exactly 10 years ago when we were on a bus together, and you had invited me to join your Heart of America tour. And it was one of the most extraordinary moments because you took time out from your busy schedule to travel around the Midwest to the districts of the leaders of Congress to talk to the people about supporting aid for Africa. And so there was you, there was Chris Tucker, the great actor, Ashley Judd, the wonderful, beautiful actor, and then the nerdy Asian guy that talked about AIDS, right? And so since that time, I have just admired so much your willingness to do whatever it takes, even going to Wheaton College in the middle of Illinois to really beat the drum for ending poverty. I want you to know, here today, the reason that they're so excited to be here is not necessarily because you're a rock star. It's because they have passion to end poverty. Right?
There you have it. He laid it down for you so you know where you stand. Okay. Now, bearing in mind, I'm going to speak slowly because the accent was misinterpreted earlier. Okay? So you know where we stand. But I'm going to throw this question out, and it is to both of you. But Bono, I'd like you to pick it up first. You both have, during the course of your careers, been out on the streets clamoring for change. Bono, I want you to share with us perhaps a critical lesson you have learned over the course of your career that has maybe led to you doing things differently today than when you started.
Oh, start with the mistakes.
Yeah.
You're good. Yeah, there's been a lot of mistakes made along the way. Some of the things I suppose I most regret are that in order to raise the alarm on a particular crisis, which is part of our job in the One campaign, is to raise the alarm, you have to dramatize situations. And it's very easy, for instance, to give the continent of Africa the character of a country in Africa, which is very unfair. And I think that's probably annoyed some people over the years, and it's annoyed me. It's a very hard balance because you understand that if you don't dramatize the situation, you won't get the funding and people will needlessly die. But if you over-dramatize the situation, you create a wrong aura around what is, an astonishing success story in many ways, and Africa is, as I was saying the other night, it's not just African tigers. It's a pride of lions, some roaring, and some not. But there's, and will the ones that are rising be able to bring the other ones with them or not is a real question. But I learned not to, that I must balance the situation. And then the other thing was, and it's tied to that really, which is the lesson of how commerce has in the end the most major role to play, and that the work that we do fighting for aid flows and smart aid, as we call it now, that it's really a bridge to a place where people, where these countries will prosper on their own quarter. And we were speaking just before he came out, and I realized I don't think I've ever been in an organization whose passionate commitment is to put themselves out of a job by 15 years or 20 years. That is awesome. And it's like, that's,
There'll still be stuff to do, don't worry.
I hope there isn't. I mean, I really hope that is the feeling in this room. And I sense it is. You want to see the end of extreme poverty, the really stupid, brutal kind of extreme poverty. That's why you're all here. And it's not some airy-fairy, soft focus idea. It's real. We can measure extreme poverty, and we can measure the outcomes as well as the inputs.
And I'm going to get Jem for you to jump in there. You are now on the inside. I don't mean to make it sound like you're part of the mob or anything, but you are on the inside now. What do you do differently now that you're leading an institution like the World Bank?
Did you say the mob?
I did say the mob.
Dangerous.
Well, the roots of activism are that you see a situation that you think is fundamentally unjust, and you work to do whatever it takes to tackle that situation. I have to say that absolutely the most encouraging thing that I've learned is that there is such deep passion here to end poverty. Now, over 66 years, we've also developed a lot of other skills, and I now have to focus on lots of different issues, including the financial future of the organization and things like that. But I think fundamentally, what this organization wants to do is, in a passionate way, in the spirit of the activism that almost everybody in this room participated in at one point in their lives, tackle this question and really have a huge impact. So I have to say, I've got to be, I've got to manage, I've got to think about the organization as a whole. But I don't think that it's time yet for me to give up this notion that we can tackle this problem in the spirit of activism. Let me ask, is that okay? Can we still be activists and work at the World Bank?
Okay, that was very muted. I only heard from this side. What do you think over there? Okay.
We'll see.
To be honest. You, in taking on this position, have really spotlighted the bank's core mission, the group's core mission, to eliminate poverty. You've said it can be done in our lifetime, but I'm going to push you now. When? Give me a time frame.
Well, we're talking about that right now. I mean, we're talking about really two essential parts, and we've been having this conversation throughout the organization. We're talking about our fundamental mission is doing really two things: ending poverty, but then Bono raised the question already. How do you do that? What are the ways of doing it? And we just released a report saying that in developing countries, 90% of all jobs are created in the private sector. And at the end of the day, that's what people want. People want jobs.
So what's the time frame?
So it's ending poverty by boosting shared prosperity. And watch this space. We'll have a. We have to talk about this. We have the best scholars in the world who watch poverty, and we have to think about it carefully. We have to talk with people. We have to get lots of buy-in. But I definitely think that we can find a path toward ending poverty much sooner than it's now being predicted to end, which is 20 to 25 years. We have to do it sooner than that. I think we can.
Bono.
Yeah, I think Jim is being careful because he doesn't want to be like that nursery rhyme, the grand old Duke of York, who had 10,000 men. He marched them up to the top of the hill, and he marched them down again. And when they were up, they were up. When they were down, they were down. When they were neither halfway up, they were neither halfway down, or something. You don't want to lead not just the extraordinary brain power here in this atrium, but you don't want to lead the public, and the U2 audience, the NGO community who have their supporters on some kind of merry dance, and you don't want to lead people to a sense of impotence. I really think that's very important, and I think that as a person who fronts a rock and roll band, I just have that instinctive feeling. I hate the kind of Pollyanna thing, and I know people hated they laughed and mocked at "make poverty history," which was a phrase that was, I think it was Richard Curtis' phrase actually in my house. But it was a great T-shirt, but people scoffed at it. They didn't believe it was possible. And actually, as we go into 2015 and the close of the Millennium Development Goals, it turns out that actually having extreme poverty is happening. And it's happening faster than anyone predicted. And it's not all India and China. And there are a dozen countries in Africa, for example, that are moving across that line, across different parameters and indices. So it may be possible that with the launch of the next sort of Millennium Goals 2.0, that actually instead of this rather half-hearted idea of what did you do with your life? What did you commit your life to, Dad? Well, I committed it to half extreme poverty, which is pragmatic but dull. We might actually get to a case somewhere between 2025 and 2030 where that might actually mean something. And that would be, as you Americans say, awesome.
That would be so awesome.
So awesome.
So awesome.
Awesomeness.
Awesome plus.
By the way, you are awesome. Just saying.
He's trying to throw me off my game. Don't encourage him.
But, the key, though, in terms of setting a poverty target is that it has to inspire, it has to change the way we work, it has to change the way we feel about our work, And so it's not just about launching a T-shirt or an idea. It's about trying to garner the forces. You know, we still have more than 3 years left on the MDGs, and we can do a lot better. And so as we think about setting a target for poverty, what we're looking at is finding ways of setting a target so that it dramatically changes the way we work. We're faster, we've got pace, we've got rhythm in attacking the problem, and we've got to make sure that happens.
Let me pick up on what you said. We can do better before 2015. What is the single biggest obstacle? What is it?
I think if you want to know what will turbocharge
Yes.
The fight against extreme poverty, it is open data and transparency. And I think you need to boost your boost. I think that's Sanjab. I think he's done an incredible job here. It's not done, by the way. We need much more access to your data. But it sounds like a wonky word, but Isha, what it is it's transformative. Transparency is transformative, and I'll tell you why. Everybody here knows that the biggest killer of them all, bigger killer than AIDS, TB, malaria, probably the lot together, is corruption. And it's it's not just corruption south of the equator, it's corrupt ideas north of the equator, and sometimes actual corruption north of the equator. And we're in the middle of a fight, you may have noticed, on the extractive industries, where the United States has very bravely allowed for an amendment to the Dodd-Frank Finance Reform Bill. It's called the Carden-Lugar Amendment, which makes it law that any mining, oil, gas company, any mineral, any extractive company has to publish what they pay for those mineral rights. If they're on the New York Stock Exchange, it is law that they publish what they pay. This is incredible. Why? Because then the civil societies groups in all those countries, they can hold their governments accountable. Why are we doing this? Because our activists on the ground in the developing countries tell us this is important for them. So transparency is really important. I might add, the American Petroleum Institute has injuncted the SEC to try and stop that ruling. That's shocking. That is absolutely shocking, and we're not going to have that.
Now, at this point, I want to bring in some questions that were sent in as part of what will it take, the campaign to end poverty. And Jim, I'm going to throw this to you. This came from Saiful Salahuddin from Indonesia on the same issue of transparency and accountability. And his question was, Jim, what is the bank doing to address these issues?
Well, we've been, the open data, the cheer, you heard us from people in an institution have been working on that very project. Sure. It's been critical. I mean, this is one of Bob Zoellick's great legacies that he really pushed, that we've made all of our data open. But then there's all the other things that we're working on together, the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. We completely agree. And on the issue of corruption, again, I think Bob said it best. Corruption is simply stealing from the poor. And so we've in every setting, we've now refused to give direct budget support to countries that don't publish their budgets. So we're completely with you on this. This is exactly one of the most important, and I would agree, one of the biggest impediments to progress. We're with you.
Yeah, Sanjay Prajan, is that how you pronounce his name? Really, it's an amazing, really clear thinker on this. And I have to say, I've been on the website myself.
There he is.
And where is he?
Sanjay's right there.
Oh, Sanjay. I've been on... I'm a fan. I've seen your TED Talk. I've been on the website, on the Boost thing. I'm like a Sanjay groupie here. And this website's beautiful because you just dial in whatever country. I think there's 3 African countries, and you go through whatever sector, and it comes up, and get very, very excited. And then I realized, God, am I being sexually aroused at the collation of data? What has happened to me? God help us all. But this is the turbocharger for the fight against extreme poverty. It's so exciting. You know, right across the developing world, there's incredible ideas. Like, is it Kenya? I can't remember where I met. iPaidAbride.com.
Because I was going to ask you about technology and what role it can play.
And, just getting this stuff, getting information out there. Twaweza, that's incredible. Rajesh, and amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question now, which could be edgy, but you're a rock star, so you'll appreciate. And Jim, I put it to you. Can you eliminate poverty in countries where corrupt officials remain in office?
It's much harder. Absolutely, no question. It's much, much harder. You know, but the thing is, one of the great things about being a World Bank is we have 188 member countries, and we are a multilateral organization, and one of the things we do is we engage with countries. And so I think it's harder. I think it's much harder to end poverty in those countries, but all the steps we're taking are exactly focused on trying to shine a bright light in those countries. The other thing we've done is that when we sense that there might be corruption, we've stopped projects. The latest one was the Padma Bridge in Bangladesh. And so we have to show that if there is suspicion, no matter how meritorious the project is, we have to be ready to step up and just stop a project. Now, there have been good developments. We hope to keep moving in the right direction so we can build a critically important bridge. But we're sending a very strong message to the world that if there is corruption, we will stop working with you.
This question from Avusaglo Seth from Ghana. He tweeted that it takes reducing corruption through models of transferring development aid directly to targeted people without the hands of government. Bono, how well is development aid getting to the needy people themselves?
Again, we need better data. We talk about smart aid. That's the sort of phrase that we're using now. Sustainable, measurable, accountable, rational. I'm just picking that out. Transparent aid. Getting it through to the people will only improve by the levels of transparency. When people know, I remember years ago in Uganda on debt cancellation, there was I think it was called a Poverty Action Fund, PAF. And it was just a simple thing where monies freed up from debt cancellation would be spent in a rural area, and the local people knew how much had been put down on a new school or whatever the building was, and they could then hold their local officials. So what I think that question suggests is that there is an absurdity that in the transaction that is development assistance, the two most important parties, the taxpayer, the person whose money it is we're spending, and the donor, so to speak, and the recipient, the person who's going to sit in that school, are the two parties who know the least about the transaction. And that's absurd. And that's why this open data thing is very important. And I think it will mean that we'll get efficiencies, great efficiencies.
Can the bank be more effective at getting aid directly to those that are in need?
Yeah, we're trying. I mean, Sanjay, again, has just started an initiative where we're working directly with civil society organizations. And I think, you know, we have to do more of that. But our member states are nation states, and so it's more difficult for us. But I think, you know, some of the things that we're doing, I think we have to be extremely honest about those programs that might be popular but actually don't get to the poorest and benefit the poorest, and those that do. So, for example, we've been saying for a long time that fuel subsidies are, one, probably bad for the environment, and two, they don't usually really get and serve the poorest of the poor, that it's another group of people that benefit the most. These are hard messages because fuel subsidies are very popular. But I think we have to have the courage to say those things and say, these are the programs that you're investing in that are actually helping the poorest. And these are the ones that are popular and might cause popular unrest, but you really got to look at them because other programs are better, like cash transfer programs and things like that.
I want to go big picture. You talked about the Millennium Development Goals, and as we talk about the first of those goals, eradicating poverty, extreme poverty, and hunger, can we trust the data come 2015?
Well, let me put it this way. It's a lot better than it used to be. And that's one of the benefits of the Millennium Development Goals, that we started really working to measure them. But Bob was right. The quality of the data still is nowhere near where it could be. One of the things we're doing is that we're going to increase the number of times. We're going to try to publish our poverty data every year so that we have some sense that there's movement or not from country to country. The data is nowhere near where we'd all like it to be, But
So can we call 2015 a success? Is my point.
well,
At that point,
well, I
if
think
we
we
can't
can
even
call.
trust the data.
I think
at
we
this
can call
stage.
it a success around certain things. Again, you know, in certain areas and in certain of the MDGs, we've made a lot of progress, but there's still a long way to go. But the important thing, what I would say is, one of the things that worried me in 2000 about the MDGs is that the end date was so far away. I didn't sense that the setting of those targets created a lot of energy and rhythm and motion. And so we now have 3 years left, and I would like to see us get that kind of energy and rhythm and motion now. For me, 3 years is a long time. It's a long time still that we have left. And so the data's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it used to be. And I think it's good enough for us to recommit ourselves to trying to achieve the MDGs. We can still do it. I still believe we can do it.
Bono, what do you think post 2015? What happens then? What do you do then?
Well, we got the job done. You wouldn't have to listen to me, you know, whining on about this stuff. You know, we have to re-intensify, is the truth, in the next few years, and it's a very awkward moment to even say that because there's so much pain coming from the economic downturn and recession and this fiscal cliff, which is why I'm in town, because there's real jeopardy. You know, if this sequestration, should it happen, you know, it costs, I think it's 8.2%. It just lobs off the whole top of everything. So that's about 2 billion of the programs that we care. That's probably, you know, 275,000 kind of order of people whose programs would be cut, maybe 65,000 deaths. Think about that. Deaths. So we're carrying this with this at the moment, that cuts, you know, we know there's going to be cuts, we understand that, but not cuts that cost lives. And strangely enough, on both sides of the aisle here in the United States, people are accepting of that. And
Accepting, but
well, no, I think they really don't want. I think that there is support. I'm really. I was encouraged over the last few days. I'm still terrified about people wrestling the wheel of this, you know, mad sort of lorry that they're driving off the cliff. But I'm at least encouraged that the commitment to programs that are working will not be cut.
Are you terrified as well?
Well,
forgive me.
I think that I'm more optimistic. You know, there's just so many things at risk that my deep hope is that we'll find a way out of this. But I think part of the message that we as a World Bank have to send is that this is not about saying charity is okay in times of growing economies, but we have to cut back in times where it's not easy. Because look, the growth of the global economy is critical. And the growth in the global economy has happened in developing countries over the last 5 years. You know, Latin America has responded quickly. Africa still has a very, 4 to 5% growth rate. China and India less so. But, these countries continue to grow. And so what has held up global growth is the developing countries, and the foundations for that global growth, the health, the education, the social protection programs, were as a result of the generosity of donor countries in the past. So for us to pull back now, I think has to be understood as undermining the foundations of the future growth of the global economy. It's not charity.
Do they get that? Do lawmakers really get that?
It's rational.
Do they get that as you speak to people, Bono?
Well, we've been saying, and I think we're being heard, that an economic recession does not have to be a moral recession.
But it's not just about the growth in countries like India and China underpinning global growth. It's not just that. I mean, I think that the likes of Douglas Alexander, the former development secretary in the UK, now shadow foreign secretary, he said it best, that effectively it is in the interests of rich countries because also, as has been pointed out, we share borders, we're dealing with growing terrorism around the world. It is also a security issue. When you speak to people, do they get that? Do they get the urgency?
Well, can you imagine the recession that we're in now, where there are not nearly 200 million Chinese people who have entered a kind of middle class, or whatever it is, 150,000 Indians that are, buying our products and all that kind of stuff. I mean, without what's happening in South America, Latin America, we would be fucked.
He's a rock star.
So we owe them, you know, we owe them, and the emerging markets are keeping us all afloat. And I think what the good doctor is saying is that the best medicine to keep us afloat is more, you know, countries moving from being LDCs to being middle-income countries. We're seeing that in Africa. We'll see it elsewhere, and it's great.
And you know, there are countries that continue to step up. You know, the UK has increased their development assistance. We were just in Korea. They're doubling the percentage of their GDP that they're going to give for development assistance. Australia is increasing it. So there are lots of countries that understand the importance of investing in the foundation of future growth. That's very encouraging, even in these times. And I you know, in my discussions with leaders around the world, I think everyone understands that pulling back now is not a good idea. They're under intense domestic political pressure, of course. So, but I think there's deep understanding of the importance of continuing to invest in future growth.
So what do you do about those countries that are beginning to do well? They're showing progress. They are moving to middle-income countries now, but they still have these intractable pockets of poverty where a middle class is growing, but the disparity is growing. What do you do there?
Well, you know, I was just in a place, Haiti, where the inequality is the worst in the hemisphere. And the message that we delivered was very clear, that the way things had been done in the past, where a very tiny proportion of the people enjoyed middle class and even upper class lifestyles, and the vast majority were poor, what we told them was that not only is that bad in some sort of deep human sense, but it's also not a good strategy. It's not a good strategy to be competitive. It's not a good strategy to grow your overall economy. People, you know, the importance of inclusiveness, I think, is clear. It's research that people in this audience have been doing for years. And we can now give the message very clearly that being inclusive, especially of young people, especially of women, this is the right economic strategy. It's not just a moral issue. It's the right economic strategy. And boy, I was happy to be able to go back to Haiti, you know, having lived and worked in that country, and be able to say that so clearly and get a very positive response from both the government and the private sector.
Just on the women front, I was just reading a book by Sheryl Sandberg on women and the role of women, and there's a quote from Warren Buffett in it. He said that he owed a lot of his success to the fact that he was only competing with half the people, and that he didn't think he would be where he was today at all. He thinks he's looking forward to much more challenges coming from women and in the world. And he was talking about this and has talked about this all his life. Can you imagine what the world is going to look like when women really take over? I'll say it.
I'll clap to that.
You know,
I meant to say when women buy CDs, but I just couldn't get it out.
It's a you know, we've been watching, and it seems like the lesson of putting women at the center of any development program, it seems like we have to learn it again and again and again.
Why is that?
And you know, well,
why is that?
It's men.
It's men.
Men are actually the ones with the blocked up ears, I think,
well,
on that
you know,
one.
things like microenterprise lending. Microenterprise lending works better when you give loans to women, and yet programs around the world start by giving, you know, loans mostly to men. So it's just something that we have to learn again and again and again. But I think that the lesson is being learned more and more everywhere.
It's
I go.
another turbocharger.
Yeah,
It
really
is indeed another turbocharger. Is the fight to eliminate poverty, is it harder when it is not in Sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia, and we're talking about, say, a place like Greece, or talking about, I don't want to say China, but I'm going to leave it at somewhere like Greece. Is it harder? Does the language change in terms of the fight, depending on the location of the extreme poverty? Does it?
Well, different geographies have very
Because it comes with different,
you know, very different responses. The one that I'm particularly inspired by is in Brazil, because that is an astonishing success story if you think about it. And they've taken, I don't know what it is, it's like 25% of their people out of poverty with, is it Bolsa Familia, is that how you pronounce it? Bolsa Familia. I mean, it's just an incredible, and I think the World Project, the World Bank are part of that project. And by the way, the one thing the World Bank, if you don't mind me saying, so you don't really get a lot of credit when you get things right. And I think one of the reasons for that is you're not very good at branding, and this is the home of the crap acronym. And I think you should start.
Excuse me?
A whole thing. No, I think I have an idea for it. It's the Coalition for the Production for the production of responsible acronyms. And if you fiddle with that, you'll discover a responsible acronym. And but you know, the Millennium Development Goals, the MDGs, crap acronym. I remember being in Crimea it's just outside of Accra, a dreadful, tough ghetto. And there were no latrines for the 150,000 people that were there. And we were furious, and it was early days in debt cancellation. And a few years later, it was back, and they had the latrines. So I actually, you know, really wanted to use them. And so I went in, I was like, this is great. I really am going to enjoy this. And having worked, I wasn't, you know, okay. So, and I look up, and it said, this bathroom brought to you by HIPIC. 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 Heavily indebted per country. I'm a wonk. I've become a wonk. I knew what that meant. Did anyone in the entire region? HIPIC. So there it was. You know, and actually, if you don't mind me talking,
you should have said brought to you by crap, right? That would have been better. Got that, team? All right.
It's funny. I shouldn't really say, but you know, when I sort of became an activist, you know, I was like a bit angry and didn't really a bank, you know, the Bretton Woods. And it was like, ugh. And then I got a chance to go meet Jim Wolfenson, who later I would just learn so much from, and this is just a great guy. And it's myself and Bob Geldof, and we met him in a hotel in London. And I was saying to Bob on the way in, I said, let's hear him out, you know, just go a little easy on him, because I know what Bob can do. So I'd never met Jim Wolfenson. He opens the door, hello, you know, do come in. We're only in the door. Bob was, now here's an old fire. And he's so, Jim is like, oh my God, and there's spittle and taken out of his eye, and there's a lot of Irishness going off. And he turns to me in a very sort of dulcet tones, he just says, so he said, I believe you were made a knight. And I said, oh no. Oh no, I'm not Sir Bob Geldof. That is Sir Bob Geldof. And you know, we had this kind of attitude about the bank, and it was all structural adjustment, and you know, undergraduates telling countries how to organize their economies, and it turned out, you know, that debt cancellation started here.
Exactly. Exactly. There are people in this audience who worked on it.
I'm sure there are, and you know, I think it's 52 million children, an extra 52 million children now trace their education to debt cancellation. I mean, in partnership with these governments that spent the money very well. That is astonishing, and I want to thank the World Bank for being a part of that.
So what? You can take a round of applause. So what grade would you give the World Bank for their efforts? Give them a grade.
On that?
Yeah, give them a grade.
10 out of 10 on that. And I mean, I think you needed a social movement. And that's, I think, why Jim is talking about activists on the inside here, because it always takes a social movement, because in the end, the politicians work for us. And they will do what we tell them to do if there's enough of us in the telling. And so it took, you know, doing stuff at the G8. We'd all stand around Cologne, and there'd be priests and punks and Tom York from Radiohead and me holding hands, and it's like, you know, religious folks, irreligious folks. But that's what it took to achieve that. But the actual, the intellectual rigor of the methodology was here.
So what do you want to see from the bank next?
I'd like to see the bank put itself out of business in 20 years. That's what I'd like to see.
Okay. Let me try again.
And what a success story if you're going on to other jobs.
What a success
Come
story.
on.
20, 25 years, that's great, that's down the road. But in the next 5 years, what do you want to see from them?
How are you going to push us? Let's put it that way.
I think continuing to open the data, that the more you publish country, your country plans and the numbers behind them, I think accepting that the world is numerate and can understand this stuff, although there will have to be some capacity building in different regions so that people do understand what you're doing. I think that's going to be very important. And understanding, above all else, and I was saying this the other night, you know, this is the start of the 21st century. The pyramid, the sort of traditional model of power is being turned on its head. Base is is kind of in charge now. So that base better be educated. And I think that's the key, is the understanding. We have to invest in the understanding so that the bank is not a top-down thing, but it's a bottom-up organization, and that all your people on the ground feed back to you what they need, and then you serve those people on the ground. I think the inverted pyramid applies to the World Bank also.
Can the bank change in a timely manner?
We will. We're going to. We're, there's so much that we can do, and there are things that I'm learning every day from the team that just makes perfect sense and that everyone agrees on. We have to incentivize the right things. We have to value our great staff. We have to not be afraid to take risks. Everybody, you heard me say it again. This is a risky business. Trying to end poverty is a risky business. We have to be innovative. We have to work quickly. We have to reduce the length of time it takes for us to prepare a project. We have to be laser focused on results on the ground. And you know what? This is not something that's going to take years. This is something that we're going to do very quickly. Now, we have to be sure that everyone is on board. That's why we're talking with people at every level of the organization about it. But if we fix some of the things that people throughout the organization, including the board, complain about, if we just do that, I think we can move much more quickly, and we can be a very dynamic and driving force behind this movement to end poverty. I know we can make the changes, people. Just please, we have to work together, but we have to make these changes that you're all agreeing on changing.
And are you confident of that you can do it in a timely manner?
4 words.
You see?
Nothing going on over there.
Not quite yet. Not quite yet, but we'll get there. I don't quite believe it yet, but we'll get there.
4 words. Word 3 and 4 are the advice of the great Irish playwright Samuel Beckett. Fail better. And the first 2 words, listen better. Listen better, fail better. That's what I would say.
The top "what will it take" comment received from thousands of people from around the world is that it takes food security, which you have not mentioned. You've talked a lot about data, both of you, repeatedly, but not...
You can't eat it. Well, some of us can.
Food security. How is the world going to meet the challenge? I mean, 7 billion on the planet today, an estimated 9 billion by 2050.
Who's the CEO of Cargill? I forget his name. He was saying, talking about the African continent, saying, actually he was talking about the world population and where it's getting to 9 billion. And somebody said, well, how is Africa, the continent of Africa, going to do in that? And he said, well, we can only feed the world if Africa helps to feed it. I mean, we cannot do it without that, because that's where the future production is going to come. Is that a correct analysis, do you think, good doctor?
You know, the great thing about working at the bank is that we don't have to look at issues through a narrow lens, right? So you cannot talk about food security without talking about climate change. I mean, we're losing arable land. So we have to take an approach that looks at both short-term, you know, we've got to have the mechanisms in place to meet these short-term needs, and we do a lot of that. We provide direct budget support, we work with the World Food Program, and that's one part of it. But having an approach to long-term sustainable agriculture that's linked to this problem of climate change, we got to get working on that. The window is narrowing for us to take the kind of action that we'll need to take so that we're not losing arable land so quickly that it becomes impossible. So, you know, I was worried that there was so little talk of climate change in this country during the election period, but we've got to get it on the agenda, and we've got to say this is connected to disaster. I mean, you know, we talk a lot about disaster risk management, but that's also connected to climate change. These are connected issues, and the World Bank, I promise you, is going to be extremely aggressive at tackling those three issues together.
Bono, are movements like One doing enough to clamor, to raise the voice, shine the spotlight on climate change?
You know, it's not our core skill set, but you can't divide it from the work we're doing. And, you know, last night I had dinner with, like, I don't know, 8 generals, and which was amazing. And they were interested in our issues because, for security reasons, they're very interested in development. And General Jim Jones, who headed NATO, you know, a few years ago, I've gotten to know him very well, but a few years ago he called me at home on a Sunday in Ireland to talk about this. He had this equation, I think it was stability equals security plus development. And he was very worried about what was going on in the Horn of Africa. Well, you see, the Sahel, right across North Africa, that's an incredible band. I think it translates to the shores of the Sahara, but it takes in Sudan, it takes in Nigeria, it takes in Mali, and the shocking stuff that's happening in Mali right now, which just really breaks my heart, because I was just there. That's what we call the 3 extremes. And the 3 extremes is this unholy trio of extreme poverty, extreme ideology, and extreme climate. And they make a very difficult weave, very strong and very hard to break. And we have to accept that climate change, or the climate crisis, as some call it could undo a lot of the work we do in development.
You know, if you think about it, what Bono, I think, has been talking about for such a long time is this fundamental sort of notion of global solidarity. What does that mean? And global solidarity, when does it come about? And there are all these movies, right, where we're invaded from space, and then all of a sudden, you know, the world gets together and the global solidarity emerges. Well, the climate problem, you know, is coming, and it's going to look like that. You know, a 4-degree world is.
But there are some aliens that don't believe in climate change. So
Bono, how do we move in that direction? I mean, you know, the climate change is going to be that level of threat to the entire planet, and maybe by then we'll find the roots of global solidarity. But the window's narrow, and so we've got to move quickly to try to find a way of getting it in people's heads that that's the world at 2 or 4 degrees is going to look so different, and it's not 3 generations ahead. I have a 3-year-old son. When he's my age, he could be living in a completely different world, and right now I don't see the roots of that movement yet taking shape. You know about instilling notions of global solidarity better anyway. How do we do it?
Will you lead that?
I, as I mentioned, have a sort of waking nightmare about turning into the Grand Old Duke of York, and I'm absolutely serious and convinced on the climate crisis. I haven't seen a plan that I could help communicate, explain, or be part of the social. I see others. I don't see that narrative emerge as sort of meta narrative that's necessary. So I stick to the things I absolutely know that we can deliver, because I just don't want to fail. And
You're right.
So I know what to do in extreme poverty, but on extreme climate, I'm less sure-footed.
That's
all.
totally fair, Bono.
Yeah,
And
that is.
I think what we have to do is not just say that there's a doomsday scenario coming. We have to get people really excited about the vision of a world where a green economy would be booming and it would be creating jobs, and what a very low carbon world, the excitement that could bring. And there are examples of it all over the world. We haven't been very good at talking about the upside, the grand vision. But when we get there, we'll call on you. Yeah.
We are rapidly running out of time, unfortunately. So, Bono, at this point, what message do you want to leave with these good folks that have joined us this afternoon? What message do you want to leave with World Bank staff and civil society? It is yours.
I never thought I would say this, and my father was alive. It would make him smile. I want to go work for the bank. It's like, these are the pros. They've given their life to this, and I've given a lot of my life to it too. But these are the pros. These are the sort of Jedi economists that are going to do it, and I have no advice for them. Listen better, fail better. Maybe I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
We can drop a contract. Sean McGrath, our head of HR, we can have one to you before you leave the door. I just want to thank you for coming. I want to thank you for everything you've done. I'm serious about you being the leader in trying to help us see a path toward global solidarity. And I was telling Bono before I came, Koreans are known as the Irish of the Orient. Did you guys know that? Think about the history of Korea and the history of Ireland. There's all kinds of wonderful similarities. And I have to say, I've never been prouder of being an honorary Irishman than I am today.
The Korean-Irish axis. I want to say one thing about your president. I've gone on tour with him. But personal hygiene, good. He's an activist, and I remember he had this idea, 3 by 5, to get 3 billion people on antiretroviral drugs, 3 billion HIV, AIDS.
3 million, but
3 million.
yes,
Sorry,
okay.
that was a large vision. And at that time, we're getting there though. And it just was the most, it was like, he's on the wrong kind of drugs. And he was 100% right. And it took, I think it was 2006, going in 2007 before we got there. But it was that idea that, dare to have a big idea. And that's who he is. And Paul Farmer, his partner at that time, and I remember in Haiti, was doing incredible work. We were in awe of them. And so you have an activist as your president, and I'm very happy to be part of the Irish-Korean axis myself.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that brings this event to a close. I'd like to thank you all. And our global audience, a warm round of applause for Bono. It's the closest some of you will ever get to him. And the World Bank president. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.